The cargo ship, Rising Phoenix, moved through the dark space of the Helios sector. Inside the ship, Captain Minho sat in his chair on the bridge, watching the screens in front of him. He was 45 years old, with gray hair at his temples and calm eyes that had seen many things in his years traveling through space. "Captain, we have company," said Yuna from the navigator's seat. She was young, only 26, but she was the best pilot the civilian fleet had ever seen. Her fingers moved across her controls, bringing up the scanner data on the main screen. Minho leaned forward and looked at what the scanners were showing. 6 ships had appeared from behind a large asteroid. They were moving fast, coming straight toward the Rising Phoenix. The ships were not human. They had the curved, blade-like design of Vracath warships. "How long until they reach us?" Minho asked. His voice was steady, showing no fear. 15 minutes at their current speed," Yuna replied. Minho pressed a button on his chair. "All crew, this is the captain. We have Vracath ships approaching. Everyone go to your stations. This is not a drill." Throughout the ship, people moved quickly to their positions. In the engine room, Hana looked up from the machine she was working on. She was 32 years old with oil on her hands and a sharp mind that understood every system on the ship. She wiped her hands and ran to her main console. "Hana, are you ready down there?" Minho's voice came through the speakers. "Always ready, Captain," she said, her fingers already dancing across her controls. "But sir, we can't outrun 6 warships. Our engines are good, but not that good." "I know," Minho said. "We're not running." In another part of the ship, Taiyang was already in the security office. He was 38 years old, a former military officer who had joined the merchant fleet after the war. He opened a locked cabinet and began pulling out weapons. They were small arms. Nothing that could fight a warship, but they were better than nothing. "Taiyang, status?" Minho asked. "Weapons distributed to all security personnel, Captain. We have 12 people who can fight if they board us." "Good, stand by." On the bridge, a message came through. Yuna put it on the main speakers. A rough, growling voice filled the room, speaking in broken human language. "Human vessel, this is Commander Thexral of the Vracath hunting fleet. You are surrounded. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Your cargo and your crew now belong to the Vracath hierarchy. Resistance will result in the destruction of your ship and the death of all aboard. You have 5 minutes to comply." The message ended. The bridge was silent for a moment. Yuna looked back at the captain. "Sir, what do we do?" Minho smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something others did not. "We wait. Let them come closer." "Captain?" Yuna was confused. "Just trust me," Minho said. He pressed another button. "Hana, begin shutdown sequence Delta." In the engine room, Hana's eyes went wide for a moment. Then she understood. Her fingers flew across her console, entering commands that would make the ship appear to be dying. "Understood, Captain. Beginning Delta sequence." The lights on the bridge flickered. The hum of the engines changed, becoming quieter. On the Vracath scanners, it would look like the Rising Phoenix was losing power. "What's happening?" asked one of the junior crew members on the bridge. "We're making them think they've already won," Minho said quietly. The 5 minutes passed. The Vracath ships came closer. They surrounded the Rising Phoenix like hunters circling wounded prey. Then, without warning, one of the Vracath ships fired. A bright beam of energy shot across space and struck the Rising Phoenix on the side. The ship shook. Alarms began to sound. Yuna gripped her controls tightly as the ship tilted from the impact. "Damage report," Minho called out. "Hull breach on Deck 3, Section 7, reported one of the bridge crew. "We're venting atmosphere in that section. Emergency doors are sealing it off." "Casualties?" "That section was empty, sir. No one was hurt." Minho nodded. The Vracath had fired at a part of the ship that their scanners showed as empty. They didn't want to damage valuable cargo or kill slaves they could sell. They were being careful, which meant they were confident. On the Vracath flagship, Commander Thexral watched his screens with satisfaction. The human ship was drifting now, seemingly helpless. Smoke was coming from the breach his weapons had made. The humans had not even tried to fight back or run away. Pathetic, Thexrol growled to his crew. These humans have no spine. Prepare boarding pods. We take the ship, take the crew, and take whatever cargo they're carrying. Today is a profitable day. His crew cheered. They had done this many times before. Humans were weak. Everyone knew this. They surrendered easily and made good slaves. 3 boarding pods launched from the Vrykith ships. They were large, armored craft designed to attach to a ship's hull and cut through. Each pod carried 50 Vrykith soldiers. On the Rising Phoenix, Minho watched the pods approaching on his screen. He looked at Yuna. How long until they attach? 2 minutes, Captain. Minho pressed his comm button. All crew, this is the captain. Hold positions. Wait for my signal. He paused, then added, and remember your training. Throughout the ship, the crew heard those words. They understood what they meant. These were not ordinary cargo haulers. Every person on the Rising Phoenix had volunteered for this mission. Every person knew what they were really carrying. Every person was ready for what came next. Taeyang checked his weapon one more time. Beside him, his security team did the same. They were not afraid. They were ready. Hana watched her screens in the engine room. Her hand hovered over a special control panel, one that was hidden behind a false wall. She waited for the captain's signal. The boarding pods got closer. 50 meters, 20 meters, 10 meters. On the bridge, Minho watched them come. He counted silently in his head. When the first pod touched the hull of his ship, he pressed the comm button one more time. Now, Hana, show them what we really are. In the engine room, Hana smiled and pressed the hidden controls. Throughout the Rising Phoenix, systems that had been carefully concealed suddenly came to life. The ship was about to show the Vrykith that they had made a terrible mistake. The moment Hana pressed the hidden controls, everything changed. The lights on the Rising Phoenix came back to full power. The engines roared back to life, stronger than before. All across the hull, panels slid open to reveal weapons that should not exist on a civilian cargo ship. Point defense cannons emerged from hidden compartments. Missile tubes opened along the sides. The ship that had appeared helpless and dying now bristled with military-grade weapons. On the Vrykith flagship, Commander Thexrol stared at his screens in shock. What is this? What is happening? His answer came in the form of weapons fire. The point defense cannons on the Rising Phoenix opened fire, their rapid shots tearing through space. The 3 boarding pods that had just launched were caught in the open, unprotected. The first pod exploded into fragments. The 50 Vrykith soldiers inside died instantly. The second pod tried to turn away, but the cannons tracked it with perfect accuracy. It burst apart in a ball of flame. The third pod activated emergency shields, but they were designed to protect against debris, not military weapons. The shields lasted 3 seconds before failing. The pod followed its companions into destruction. All boarding craft destroyed, Yuna reported from her station. Her voice was professional, but there was satisfaction in it. Minho stood from his chair. Broadcast on all Vrykith frequencies. Yuna nodded and opened the channel. Minho spoke, and his voice was cold as ice. Commander Thexrol, you made a mistake today. You thought we were helpless merchants. You were wrong. He paused. You chose the wrong ship. On the Vrykith flagship, Thexrol felt something he had not felt in many years. Fear. All ships, destroy that vessel. Fire everything. But 3 more boarding pods had already launched before the order to fire. They were too close to the Rising Phoenix now. If the warships fired their main weapons, they would destroy their own pods. Thexrol realized this too late. The 3 pods attached to the hull of the Rising Phoenix with heavy magnetic clamps. Cutting torches began burning through the hull. Inside the pods, Vrykith soldiers prepared to storm into the ship. They were confused and angry. Their companions had been killed, but they were already committed. They would take this ship and kill every human aboard. Inside the Rising Phoenix, Taeyang watched his screens. He could see exactly where the 3 pods had attached. He smiled grimly. They're coming through in sections 4, 7, and 9, just like we predicted. All teams in position? Minho asked through the comm. Yes, sir. Security teams are ready. Automated defenses are active. In the medical bay, Dr. Soman was preparing for wounded. She was 40 years old, calm and efficient. She had converted the medical bay into a fortress. The doors were reinforced. Medical supplies were secured. She had a weapon on the table beside her instruments. She hoped she wouldn't need it, but she was ready. Soman, status? Minho asked. Medical bay is secure, Captain. Ready for casualties. In the cargo hold, Junho stood among the massive containers. He was 35 years old and knew every inch of the cargo areas. His hands rested on a control panel that operated the cargo handling systems. The huge mechanical arms that normally moved containers could be used for other purposes. He was ready to show the Vrakith exactly what those purposes were. The first breach opened in Section 4. The cutting torch finished its work, and a circular section of hull fell inward with a crash. Vrakith soldiers poured through, their weapons ready. They were large creatures, each one standing over 2 meters tall with thick armor and powerful bodies. What they found inside surprised them. The corridor was empty. No humans, no resistance. Just an empty hallway with lights that suddenly turned red. Trap, one of the Vrakith shouted. Too late. Hidden panels in the walls and ceiling opened. Automated turrets emerged and began firing. The Vrakith soldiers tried to return fire, but the turrets were small, fast-moving targets controlled by computers. The narrow corridor became a killing zone. Half the Vrakith boarding team died in the first 30 seconds. The survivors pushed forward, trying to reach cover. They made it around a corner and found themselves facing Taeyang and his security team. The humans had taken position behind reinforced barriers. They had clear fields of fire down the corridor. Open fire, Taeyang said calmly. The security team's weapons opened up. They were using armor-piercing rounds designed to penetrate Vrakith combat suits. The aliens tried to advance, but the humans were in a superior position. Every step forward cost the Vrakith more soldiers. In Section 7, the second boarding team cut through into the cargo hold. They found themselves standing on a metal platform high above the floor. Below them, they could see dozens of large cargo containers. Above them, the cargo handling arms hung silent and still. Spread out and secure the area, the Vrakith team leader ordered. His soldiers began moving along the platform. That's when Junho activated the cargo systems. The handling arms came to life with a mechanical whine. One of the arms swung around suddenly, its heavy grabber smashing into the platform. 3 Vrakith soldiers were knocked off, falling 20 meters to the hard floor below. Another arm lifted a cargo container and swung it like a massive club. It crashed into the platform, bending the metal and sending more Vrakith falling. The aliens tried to shoot at the arms, but they were too large and heavily built to be damaged by small arms fire. Junho sat at his controls, using the cargo systems like weapons. He had practiced this many times in simulations. Now he was doing it for real, and it was working. The Vrakith boarding team in the cargo hold was being torn apart by machinery that was never designed to be a weapon. The third boarding team cut through in Section 9, near the ship's communications center. They entered more carefully, having heard the sounds of fighting from the other 2 teams. They moved slowly, checking every corner. They found Nari waiting for them. She was 29 years old, the communications officer, and she was not alone. She had set up in a room full of computer equipment, with only one narrow entrance. That entrance was covered by 2 automated defense drones that Taeyang had positioned there. When the Vrakith tried to enter, the drones opened fire. But these soldiers were smart. They used grenades, throwing them around the corner to destroy the drones. The explosions echoed through the corridor. Drones are down, Nari reported to the bridge. They're coming in. Fall back to the bridge, Minho ordered. We need you alive. Nari grabbed her equipment and ran. Behind her, the Vrakith soldiers entered the communications room. They began smashing the equipment, trying to stop any signals from going out. They didn't know that Nari had already done what she needed to do. She had been broadcasting the entire battle on all human emergency frequencies. She had also hacked into the Vrakith fleet's communications and planted false data in their systems. On the Vrakith flagship, Thexral was receiving reports that made no sense. His scanners were showing human reinforcements approaching, but his long-range sensors showed nothing. His communication systems were telling him that the other Vrakkith ships were taking heavy damage, but he could see them through his windows and they looked fine. "What is happening?" he roared at his crew. "Why are our systems malfunctioning?" One of his officers looked up from a console, his face pale. "Commander, I think the humans have infiltrated our network. They're feeding us false information." Thexerl felt his fear growing. These were not ordinary humans. This was not an ordinary cargo ship. Everything they knew about humans was wrong. On the rising Phoenix, Minho watched the status reports coming in. The battle was going well, but it was not over. "Taiyang, report. Section 4 is secure. All hostiles eliminated. We lost 2 people, both wounded but stable. Section 7 is almost clear. Section 9 hostiles are being pushed back toward their entry point." "Good. Once they're all dead or driven back, seal those breaches." "Yes, sir." Captain Minho looked at the screens showing the 6 Vrakkith warships surrounding his vessel. They had dealt with the boarding teams. Now it was time to deal with the ships themselves. It was time to show the Vrakkith what happened when you attacked a human vessel. The fighting inside the Rising Phoenix was brutal and quick. In Section 4, Taiyang moved forward with his team. The Vrakkith soldiers who had survived the automated defenses were now trapped between the turrets behind them and the human security team in front. They had no choice but to fight, and they fought desperately. Hyun was Taiyang's second-in-command. He was 34 years old and had served in special forces before joining the merchant fleet. He moved like a shadow, using the ship's corridors to his advantage. The Vrakkith were bigger and stronger, but the humans knew every corner of the ship. They knew where to stand, where to shoot, where to move. A Vrakkith soldier charged around a corner, roaring and firing his weapon. Hyun was already waiting, pressed against the wall in a position where the alien couldn't see him until it was too late. He fired 3 shots, all of them hitting vital points. The Vrakkith fell heavily to the floor. "Section 4 is clear," Hyun reported. "All hostiles down. Beginning sweep to confirm." In the cargo hold, Junho was finishing his work. The last few Vrakkith soldiers were trying to climb back up to their boarding pod, hoping to escape. Junho used the cargo arms to grab one of the smaller containers and threw it at them. The container, weighing several tons, crashed into the platform and sent the remaining aliens falling to their deaths. "Cargo hold is secure," Junho said into his comm. "These invaders won't be stealing anything today." The hardest fight was in Section 9. The Vrakkith team there was the largest, and they were well-trained. They had pushed into the ship deeper than the other teams. Now they were trying to reach the bridge, trying to capture or kill the captain. Nari had made it to safety, but the Vrakkith were still coming. They moved through the corridors, destroying everything in their path. They were angry now, knowing that their mission had failed, knowing that most of their companions were dead. All they wanted was to kill humans before they died themselves. Taiyang and Hyun rushed to intercept them. They brought half the security team with them, leaving the other half to guard the sealed sections. The 2 groups met in a wide corridor near the crew quarters. The fight was close and personal. The Vrakkith used their size and strength, trying to overwhelm the humans with brute force. But the humans used skill and tactics. They worked together, covering each other, making every shot count. When one human reloaded, another was already firing. Taiyang saw the Vrakkith team leader, a massive creature with scars across his face and heavy armor. This one was dangerous. He was directing his soldiers with hand signals, trying to organize them into an effective fighting formation. "Hyun, the big one. He's their leader," Taeyang said. "I see him," Hyun replied. He moved to the side, trying to get a clear shot. But the Vrakkith leader was smart. He kept his soldiers between himself and the humans. The corridor filled with weapons fire and shouting. A Vrakkith soldier broke through the human line and grabbed one of the security team members. The alien was strong enough to lift the human off the ground with one hand. But the human didn't panic. He pressed his weapon against the Vrakkith's neck and fired. Both of them fell to the ground. "Man down!" someone shouted. Dr. Soman's voice came through the comm. "Bring him to me. I'm ready." 2 security members grabbed their wounded companion and pulled him back toward the medical bay. The fight continued without them. Taeyang made a decision. They were winning, But it was taking too long. Every second this fight lasted was another second his people were in danger. He opened a ship-wide channel. All personnel in sections 8 through 12, evacuate to the bridge. Seal all blast doors behind you. Move now. Sir, what are you planning? Hyun asked. Something they won't expect, Taeyang said. He pulled out a device from his belt. It was a remote control for the ship's emergency systems. Throughout the ship, warning sirens began to sound. The crew members still in the affected sections ran for the exits. Heavy blast doors began closing, sealing off compartments one by one. The Vrakith soldiers looked around in confusion. When all the crew were clear, Taeyang pressed a button on his remote. In sections 8 through 12, the atmosphere began to vent into space. The air rushed out through emergency vents that were never meant to be used this way. The Vrakith soldiers felt the air being pulled from around them. Their armor had emergency seals, but these took a few seconds to activate. Those few seconds were all Taeyang needed. He and his team, already wearing emergency masks that they had quietly put on, moved forward into the dying wind. The Vrakith were struggling to breathe, their movements slow and confused. The humans shot them down methodically, one by one. The Vrakith team leader realized what was happening. He activated his armor's emergency seal and tried to rally his remaining soldiers. But it was too late. Most of them were already dead or dying. He was alone, surrounded by humans who showed him no mercy. Hyun's shot caught him in the chest. The Vrakith leader fell to his knees, then forward onto his face. He did not move again. All sections clear, Taeyang reported to the bridge. All hostile boarders eliminated. We lost 4 crew members, 8 wounded. Someone is treating them now. On the bridge, Captain Minho allowed himself a small smile. Well done. Seal all breaches and restore atmosphere to the affected sections. Yes, sir. Minho turned to Yuna. Now for the warships. How are they positioned? Yuna brought up a tactical display. The 6 Vrakith warships had backed away from the Rising Phoenix after their boarding teams failed. They were now at a safer distance, circling the human ship but not attacking. They were confused, uncertain. This was not how things were supposed to go. They don't know what to do, Yuna observed. They expected us to surrender or die. Now they're afraid. They should be, Minho said. He opened a channel to the Vrakith flagship. Commander Thexeral, your boarding teams are dead. All of them. You sent 150 soldiers onto my ship. None of them will ever leave. There was silence from the Vrakith ship. Then Thexeral's voice came through, filled with rage and fear. What are you? You are supposed to be merchants, civilian cargo carriers. Minho's eyes were cold. We were military before we were merchants, and some of us are still military, just wearing different uniforms. Did you really think humanity would send unarmed ships into contested space? Did you think we would make ourselves easy prey for raiders like you? This is a trick, a deception. You violated the codes of space commerce. We followed every rule, Minho replied. We are registered as a cargo vessel. We are carrying cargo. It's not our fault if you didn't ask what kind of cargo, or who the crew really were. You made assumptions. Those assumptions killed your soldiers. He paused, then continued. You have a choice now, Commander. You can leave this system and never speak of what happened here. Or you can try to destroy us. But know this. If you attack, I will make sure none of your ships survive to tell the tale. We may die, but we'll take you with us. On the Vrakith flagship, Thexeral was trembling with rage. He had never been challenged like this by prey. Humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to surrender. They were not supposed to fight back like this. But he could see the Rising Phoenix on his screens. The ship had taken damage, but it was still operational. It still had weapons. And clearly, those weapons worked very well. Commander, one of his officers said quietly, perhaps we should withdraw. We have already lost many soldiers. The other ships in the fleet are questioning whether we should continue. Thexeral wanted to order the attack. He wanted to blow this human ship into atoms, but he was also a survivor. He had lived this long by knowing when to fight and when to retreat. He made his decision. All ships, prepare to withdraw. We leave this system. But Minho had been waiting for something like this. He spoke into his comm. Hana, are we ready? In the engine room, Hana looked at her screens. She saw data that made her smile. Yes, Captain, we're ready. Then let's show them one more thing before they leave. Minho's voice went out over the open channel again. Commander Thexerol, I'm afraid I can't let you leave. What? Thexerol's voice was shocked. You attacked a human vessel. You tried to enslave human citizens. You murdered human crew members. Did you think there would be no consequences? Did you think you could just leave? The rising Phoenix began to move, its engines burning bright. It was not running away. It was turning toward the Vrakith fleet. You wanted a fight, Minho said. Now you have one. The Vrakith fleet scattered as the rising Phoenix charged toward them. They had never seen a cargo ship act like a warship before. It didn't make sense. Nothing about this situation made sense anymore. All ships, open fire! Destroy that vessel, Commander Thexral shouted. The Vrakith warships began firing. Energy beams and missiles streaked through space toward the rising Phoenix. On the bridge, Yuna's hands moved across her controls like she was playing a musical instrument. The ship twisted and turned, dodging some attacks and taking others on its armored sections. Shields at 70%, she reported calmly. Hull breaches on decks 2 and 5, but they're sealed. We're still combat effective. Minho watched the tactical display. 3 Vrakith ships were moving to his left, trying to surround him. 2 were above, and 1 was Thexrol's flagship, hanging back behind the others. Hana, I need everything the engines can give us, and I mean everything. In the engine room, Hana grinned. She had been waiting for this. Her fingers danced across her controls, pushing the reactors beyond their normal limits. The engines roared with power that would burn them out eventually, but they would be magnificent before they died. You have full power, Captain, but we can only maintain this for about 20 minutes before we start having serious problems. 20 minutes is all I need, Minho said. He turned to the weapons station where Hyun had taken position after the boarding teams were defeated. Hyun, target the ship on our right, the one that looks most damaged. Targeting now, Hyun replied. His screens showed one of the Vrakith ships that had taken some damage from the rising Phoenix's earlier defensive fire. Its shields were weak on one side. Yuna, bring us around. I want a clear shot. The rising Phoenix turned hard, its engines burning bright. The Vrakith ships tried to track it, but Yuna was too good. She used every trick she knew, every move she had learned in her years as a pilot. The cargo ship moved like a fighter, impossible for a vessel its size. When they were in position, Minho gave the order. Fire. The cargo containers on the rising Phoenix opened fully. Inside were not mining equipment or supplies. Inside were military-grade torpedoes, dozens of them, hidden in plain sight. They launched all at once, a swarm of deadly missiles heading straight for the wounded Vrakith ship. The alien vessel tried to evade, but it was too slow. Its shields flickered and failed under the assault. The torpedoes hit the hull and detonated. The explosions tore through armor, ripped open compartments, and found the ship's main magazine where its own missiles were stored. The Vrakith warship exploded in a massive ball of fire and debris. One moment it was there, the next it was just expanding clouds of wreckage. First kill confirmed, Hyun said with satisfaction. The other Vrakith ships slowed their attack, shocked by what they had just seen. One of their warships, destroyed by a cargo vessel. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. But it had happened. Don't give them time to think, Minho ordered. Nari, jam their communications. I don't want them coordinating with each other. Yuna, take us toward the 2 ships above us. Hyun, prepare the railgun. Railgun ready, Hyun confirmed. Nari's fingers flew across her console. The Vrakith ships suddenly found their communications filled with static and false signals. They could still see each other, but they couldn't talk to each other, couldn't coordinate their attacks. Each ship was now fighting alone. The rising Phoenix climbed toward the 2 ships above it. They fired at the approaching cargo ship, their weapons tearing into its hull. Damage alarms sounded across the bridge. Shields down to 40%, Yuna reported. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Fire in Section 6, but it's contained. Keep going, Minho said. The ship shook as another hit struck home. Somewhere deep in the ship, something exploded. But still, they climbed, getting closer to the two Vrakith warships. In range, Hyun said. Fire the railgun. Full power. The railgun was a weapon that fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds using electromagnetic force. It didn't need explosives. At the speeds it fired, simple metal slugs became devastating weapons. The rising Phoenix had one railgun hidden along its spine, disguised as a communications array. The railgun fired with a sound like thunder. The slug, a piece of dense metal weighing several tons, shot through space faster than any missile. It covered the distance to the nearest Vrakith ship in less than a second. The slug hit the Vrakith ship's engine section and kept going, punching through armor like it was paper. It went all the way through the ship and out the other side, leaving a perfectly round hole surrounded by twisted metal. The Vrakith ship's engines died. It began to drift, powerless and helpless. Emergency alarms filled its corridors as atmosphere vented from the holes in its hull. Second ship crippled, Hyun reported. Shall I finish it? No, Minho said. Let it drift. I want witnesses to survive and tell what happened here. The third ship of the upper pair tried to run. It turned away from the rising Phoenix and fired its engines at maximum power, trying to escape. Yuna, pursue, Minho ordered. Sir, that ship is faster than us, Yuna said. We can't catch it in a straight chase. You don't need to catch it. Just keep it in weapons range for 30 seconds. Yuna nodded and pushed the ship forward. They couldn't match the Vrakith ship's speed, but they could follow it long enough for what Minho had planned. Hyun, load missiles. Set them for pursuit mode with maximum fuel. Understood. Hyun programmed the missiles with the settings Minho wanted. These missiles would use all their fuel to chase the Vrakith ship, getting faster and faster until they caught it or burned out. Fire. 10 missiles launched from the rising Phoenix. They burned hard, accelerating toward the fleeing Vrakith ship. The alien vessel tried to shoot them down, but the missiles were too fast and too many. 3 missiles were destroyed. 7 got through. The explosions ripped across the Vrakith ship's rear section. Its engines exploded, and the ship began tumbling through space, out of control and dying. 3 down, Minho said. 3 to go. The remaining 3 Vrakith ships, including Thexrol's flagship, were now trying to coordinate without communications. They moved together, forming a defensive formation. They had finally realized that they were not the hunters anymore. They were the hunted. They're getting smart, Yuna observed. Not smart enough, Minho said. He studied the tactical display, thinking. The 3 ships were staying close together, using their combined firepower to create a defensive zone. It was a good strategy, but it had a weakness. Nari, can you hack their targeting systems? Already working on it, Captain, Nari said. Her eyes were fixed on her screens, her fingers moving rapidly. Their security is good, but not good enough. Give me 2 minutes. You have 1 minute. Then I'll work faster. The rising Phoenix circled the 3 Vrakith ships, staying just out of their optimal weapons range. The aliens fired at it, but the distance made their shots less effective. The cargo ship's shields absorbed most of the damage. 45 seconds, Minho said. Almost there, Nari replied. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she worked. On the Vrakith flagship, Thexrol was shouting orders to his crew. Keep firing. Don't let it get close. Where are the other fleets? Why hasn't anyone responded to our distress calls? Our distress calls aren't getting through, Commander, one of his officers said. The humans are jamming everything. Then fire a beacon, launch a probe, do something. Commander, there's something wrong with our targeting computer. It's not responding correctly. Thexrol turned to look at the officer. What do you mean? I mean the targeting system is showing our own ships as enemy targets. It's trying to lock weapons onto our own fleet. Thexrol's eyes went wide. No. Override it. Manual control. But it was too late. Nari had done her work too well. On all 3 Vrakith ships, the targeting computers suddenly identified each other as threats. Automated defense systems came online and began firing. The 3 Vrakith ships opened fire on each other. What are you doing? Thexrol screamed at his crew. Stop firing. We're not firing, sir. The automated systems are. The three ships tore into each other with their own weapons. Shields failed, hulls were breached. One ship's magazine exploded, destroying it instantly. The other two ships, including Thexral's flagship, were heavily damaged. "Now," Minho said calmly, "finish them." The rising Phoenix moved in like a predator. Its remaining missiles and torpedoes launched, targeting the two damaged Vrakith ships. There was no escape, no defense. The weapons hit home, and both ships exploded. Commander Thexral had 1 second to realize his mistake before his ship tore itself apart around him. Then there was only fire, and silence, and death. The battle was over. The rising Phoenix drifted in space, surrounded by the debris of 6 destroyed Vrakith warships. The cargo ship was heavily damaged. Fires burned in 3 sections. The hull had dozens of breaches. One of the main engines was dead, and the other was barely functioning. On the bridge, Captain Minho sat in his chair and looked at the damage reports scrolling across his screens. It could have been worse. Much worse. "Casualty report," he said quietly. Taiyang's voice came through the comm from the security office. "Final count, 2 dead, 12 wounded. Dr. Soman says all the wounded will survive." 2 dead. Minho closed his eyes for a moment. 2 of his crew had given their lives. He would remember their names. He would write to their families, but they had won. Against 6 warships, they had won. "Engineering status," he said. Hana's voice sounded tired. "Main engine 1 is destroyed. Engine 2 is running at 30% and dropping. We have power for life support and basic systems, but we won't be going anywhere fast. I need at least 3 days to make temporary repairs." "Can we jump to faster than light travel?" "Not a chance. The jump drive took damage. I'll need parts we don't have and time we might not have. We're stuck here for a while." Minho nodded, though Hana couldn't see him. "Yuna, send out a distress call on human emergency frequencies. Tell them we need assistance." "Already done, Captain," Yuna said. "I sent it 15 minutes ago. Help should arrive in about 4 hours." "Good thinking." Nari looked up from her console. "Captain, I have something you should see. I've been analyzing the data I pulled from the Vrakith communications." "What did you find?" "This attack wasn't random. The Vrakith knew we were coming through this system. They were waiting for us specifically." Minho leaned forward. "How did they know?" "I'm not sure yet. But their orders mentioned our ship by name. Someone told them we would be here." This was troubling news. Minho made a note to investigate further once they were safe. "Save all that data. We'll need it for the report." "Already saved, sir. And Captain, there's something else. I recorded the entire battle. Everything from the moment they appeared to the moment the last ship exploded. Full audio and video." "Why?" Nari smiled slightly. "Because this story needs to be told. The Vrakith aren't the only ones who prey on human ships. Other species do it too. They all think we're easy targets. I think they need to know what happens when they're wrong." Minho considered this. She was right. For too long, human ships had been seen as weak, as prey. It was time to change that perception. "Send the recording with our distress call. Make sure it gets to Fleet Command." "Yes, sir." In the medical bay, Dr. Soman was finishing with the last of the wounded. She was exhausted, but all her patients were stable. The 2 who had died had been killed instantly during the fighting. There was nothing she could have done for them. One of the wounded security team members looked up at her. "Did we win, Doctor?" Soman smiled at him. "We won. All 6 enemy ships destroyed." The security member closed his eyes and smiled. "Good. That's good." 4 hours later, the first human ships arrived. They were military vessels, fast destroyers that had raced to respond to the distress call. When they arrived, they found the rising Phoenix drifting among the wreckage, damaged but defiant. The commander of the rescue fleet was Admiral Doyen. He was 52 years old, a career military officer who had seen many battles. When he saw the debris field and the damaged cargo ship, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Get me a comm link to the rising Phoenix," he ordered. Moments later, Captain Minho's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, and there was a cut above his eye, but he was smiling. Admiral Doyen, good to see you. Captain Minho, do you want to explain what happened here? 6 Vreketh warships attacked us. We defended ourselves. They lost. Doyen stared at him. You destroyed 6 warships? With a cargo vessel? It's not exactly a normal cargo vessel, Admiral, as you know. Doyen did know. The Rising Phoenix was part of a secret program to disguise military transport ships as civilian vessels. It allowed the military to move weapons and equipment through dangerous space without attracting attention. But he had never expected one of these ships to actually fight and win against a full raiding fleet. I've seen the recordings your communications officer sent. The whole fleet command has seen them. Captain, what you and your crew did today is going to change everything. How so? Wait and see. 2 days later, after the Rising Phoenix had been taken under tow and brought to a military station for repairs, Ambassador Yunji arrived. She was 45 years old, a member of the Human Diplomatic Corps, and she was not happy. She met with Captain Minho in a station conference room. Admiral Doyen was there too, along with several other military officers. Captain Minho, do you have any idea what kind of situation you've created? Yunji asked. I defended my ship and my crew against an unprovoked attack, Minho replied calmly. You destroyed 6 Vraketh warships. 6. The Vraketh hierarchy is demanding an explanation. They're calling it an act of war. Then they should talk to Commander Thexral. Oh wait, they can't. He's dead. Because he attacked us first. Yunji's expression softened slightly. I know. I've seen the recordings. The evidence clearly shows they attacked first. You were defending yourself. But the Vraketh are not a species that admits fault easily. Admiral Doyen spoke up. Ambassador, the recordings have been shared with every major government in known space. Everyone can see that the Vreketh attacked a civilian vessel without provocation. They have no legal ground to stand on. Legal ground and political reality are 2 different things, Admiral. Then let me add some political reality, Doyen said. He pressed a button and a screen on the wall came to life. It showed news reports from dozens of different worlds and species. All of them were talking about the same thing, the Battle of the Rising Phoenix. This story has spread across the galaxy in 2 days, Doyen said. Everyone is talking about it. The human cargo ship that destroyed 6 warships. Some species are celebrating it. They're calling Captain Minho a hero. Others are afraid. They're realizing that humans are not as weak as they thought. He switched to another report. This one showed Vraketh officials speaking at a press conference. The Vraketh hierarchy has publicly disavowed Commander Thexral. They're claiming he was acting without orders, that his attack was unauthorized. They're not calling for war. They're calling for peace. Yunji looked surprised. They're backing down? They have no choice. If they push this, they risk a war with humanity. And after seeing what one human cargo ship did to 6 of their warships, they're not sure they would win that war. Minho listened to this with interest. He had not expected the battle to have such far-reaching effects. There's more, Doyen continued. He brought up another set of reports. Attacks on human ships have decreased by 70% in the last 2 days. Pirate groups that used to target human vessels are now avoiding them. They're afraid. Good, Minho said quietly. They should be afraid. Several weeks later, the Rising Phoenix had been fully repaired. The crew had been given medals and commendations. 2 new crew members had joined to replace the ones who had died. The ship was ready to fly again. Captain Minho stood on the bridge, looking at his crew. Yuna was at the navigator station preparing for departure. Hana was in the engine room, running final checks. Taeyang was at security, as always. Nari was at communications. They were ready. All systems green, Captain, Yuna reported. We're cleared for departure. Take us out. The Rising Phoenix left the military station and headed back into open space. They had a new cargo to deliver, new destinations to reach. On the surface, everything seemed the same as before. But something had changed. Everyone in the galaxy now knew the name Rising Phoenix. They knew what happened to those who attacked it. 3 days into their journey, the ship's sensors detected another vessel approaching. It was a pirate ship, smaller than the Vraketh warships but still dangerous. Captain, we have a ship approaching, Yuna said. It's broadcasting pirate codes. Are they targeting us? They were, sir. But they just ran a scan on our ship. There was a pause. Then Yuna smiled. Captain, they're turning away. They're running. Did we fire on them? No, sir. I think they recognized our ship's signature. They know who we are. Minho allowed himself a small smile. I suppose our reputation precedes us. Shall we pursue? No. Let them go. Let them tell others what they saw. Let them spread the word. The pirate ship fled into the distance, and the rising phoenix continued on its way. In the crew quarters, Hyun and Junho were talking. Do you think we'll see action like that again? Junho asked. I hope not, Hyun said. But if we do, we'll be ready. In the medical bay, someone was restocking her supplies. She hoped she would never need to use them for combat casualties again. But she kept the medical bay fortified, just in case. On the bridge, Nari was monitoring communications from across the sector. She smiled as she listened to the chatter. Ships were warning each other about the rising phoenix. They were sharing stories about the battle. Some of the stories were exaggerated, making the fight sound even more incredible than it actually was. Captain, you should hear what they're saying about us out there, she said. I don't need to hear it, Minho replied. I just need them to remember. Don't attack human ships. Don't threaten human crews. Because if you do, you might meet someone like us. Yuna looked back at the captain. Where to next, sir? Minho checked their navigation data. The outer colonies, they're still waiting for their supplies. Same route as before? Same route. If anyone wants to try attacking us again, they're welcome to try. The rising phoenix flew on through the darkness of space. Behind it, 6 destroyed Vracath warships served as a warning to anyone who might think humans were easy prey. Ahead of it, the stars waited. The ship was just a cargo vessel. The crew were just ordinary people doing their jobs. But they had proven something important. They had shown that humans would not surrender. They would not accept slavery or death without a fight. And if you pushed them, if you threatened them, they would push back with everything they had. The message had been received across the galaxy. Humans were not prey. They were survivors. They were fighters. And they would never give up.